All right, today we're going to unlock a powerful mental model. It's something that's been used by, well, everyone from ancient philosophers all the way to today's biggest innovators. It's called first principles thinking, and it's a secret weapon for breaking down problems that seem impossible and then building brand new solutions right from the ground up.
So let's just dive right in with a question that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction. Back in the early 2000s, an entrepreneur had this totally wild dream to send a rocket to Mars, but he ran smack into a wall, a really, really expensive wall. The problem wasn't just how to get to Mars, it was how to do it without spending a truly astronomical amount of money.
For decades, if you asked the experts, the answer was pretty simple. A single rocket launch is going to cost you up to $65 million. And that price tag, it basically made space an exclusive playground for governments and these huge corporations. That was just the way it was, the accepted truth, no questions asked. But here's where it gets interesting. Instead of just accepting that price, Elon Musk asked a totally different kind of question. He didn't ask, how can I buy a cheaper rocket? He asked, what is a rocket actually made of? He just decided to completely ignore all the conventional wisdom and reason from the ground up, using what he calls a physics framework.
And this is the light bulb moment. When Musk actually broke a rocket down to its basic raw materials, the aerospace-grade aluminum, the titanium, copper, carbon fiber, he found something incredible. Their actual cost was only 2% of the final price. Think about that. The other 98%? That was just what people were charging for putting it all together. That one single insight changed literally everything.
So, that aha moment, it wasn't just luck. It was the result of using a really powerful mental tool. This is all about learning to think like a scientist. First principles thinking is about taking reality apart, piece by piece, just to see what's truly possible when you put it back together.
Okay, so what exactly is a first principle? Well, think of it as a fundamental truth. It's an idea that you can't break down any further. The philosopher Aristotle nailed this over 2,000 years ago. He called it the first basis from which a thing is known. So it's not an opinion, it's not a tradition, it's one of the core building blocks of knowledge.
And the process itself is actually super simple. It's really just two steps. First, you deconstruct. You take an idea, an object, whatever, and you strip it all the way down to its core components. Then, you reconstruct. You take those basic pieces and you start to assemble them in a totally new way. There's this great thought experiment from the military strategist John Boyd. He imagined taking the treads from a tank, the handlebars from a bicycle, and the motor from a boat to create a snowmobile. It's a perfect example of building something totally new from fundamental parts.
And while all of this feels very modern, very Silicon Valley, this is not a new invention at all. It's more like an ancient superpower that's been rediscovered by the greatest thinkers throughout history.
You can literally trace this idea through history. It starts with Aristotle in ancient Greece. Then it gets supercharged during the Enlightenment by thinkers like René Descartes, who basically doubted everything he could until he found truths that were absolutely undeniable. And now, of course, it's powering some of the biggest technological leaps of our time.
Okay, but here's the best part, and this is really for you. This way of thinking isn't just for billionaires building rockets or, ancient philosophers. It is a practical, hands-on toolkit that you can start using today on any problem you're facing.
So here's a super straightforward three-step method. First, you have to identify and then challenge the assumptions that you're holding about a problem. Then, step 2, you break that problem down to its fundamentals, the real, undeniable truths. And finally, step 3, you use those fundamental truths like building blocks to create entirely new solutions from scratch.
Now, to really nail that first step, you can borrow a technique from the master himself, Socrates. Whenever you believe something is true, just stop and ask yourself this one simple question. How do I really know this is true? Is it a fundamental law of the universe, or is it just something I've always been told or assumed? And then, here's the follow-up. This is the one that can really shatter your mental barriers. Ask yourself, and what if I thought the complete opposite? Just asking that one question can force you out of your conventional thinking patterns and open up a whole new world of possibilities.
To really get why this is such a game changer, we have to understand what it's not. See, most of the time, we think by analogy. And the best way to explain the difference is to think about the cook versus the chef.
Okay, so a cook who reasons by analogy, they follow a recipe, right? They're copying what's already been done. Maybe they make a tiny little tweak here and there. But a chef? A chef who thinks from first principles is playing a whole different ballgame. They understand the fundamental ingredients, the chemistry of fat, acid, salt, and heat. They don't need a recipe because they can invent something entirely new from the ground up.
So here's the bottom line. Reasoning by analogy just makes a slightly better version of what we already have. It optimizes the form. But first principles thinking, it completely revolutionizes the function. Analogy gives you a suitcase with a slightly better handle. First principles thinking is what puts wheels on the suitcase for the very first time.
Okay, so let's bring this all back home. I want you to take a second and really think about this. What is one thing, one process, one goal, one belief, in your work or in your life, that you've just always accepted as the way it's done? What is your version of that $65 million rocket?
Because when you really start to question that assumption, when you break it down to its most basic truths, you just might find your own 2% insight. That massive gap between what everyone else thinks is possible and what actually is. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. What rule are you going to break?